Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast. My name's Nova Gibson, and I am your host. My area of expertise is in supporting victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and other toxic relationships. I'm the principal counselor at Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counseling Service, and I'm also the author of Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about everything from the initial pink cloud you find yourself on at the start through to the horrific discard and the powerful trauma bond that keeps you hooked. So take your imaginary seat on the roller coaster that is narcissistic abuse, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Another very, very special guest today. I am so happy to introduce to you Amanda Stern. Now, for those of you who have been following me for a long time, and certainly for those of you who come to see me in my practice, you will know that one thing that I put out there as an absolute must in your healing journey from narcissistic abuse is journaling. It's such a cathartic experience, and it gets all those jumbled thoughts in your head onto paper. It makes them tangible, and you can come back to them and make sense of them and add to them. But today's guest, Amanda Stern, is actually someone who talks to people, teaches people, supports people to be able to journal. And it really is a skill that you'll take with you for the rest of your life. But I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to introduce Amanda to you. Now, Amanda has been journaling since she was a teenager, and she credits her now practice to helping her thrive through her divorce. And she didn't see this divorce coming. It helped her to discover her voice and become the person she always wanted to be. Now she empowers her clients and community to embrace journaling as a path to self-discovery, self-compassion, and self-love, so they can find their own worth, find success on their terms, and write their way to a life they love. So, Amanda, welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, I'm so happy to be here. And I have to tell you, Nova, I love the name of your podcast. I absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, anyone will tell you that I don't go for traditional names. It's always got to be something a little bit different. And of course, anyone who's been abused by a narcissist will know what a flying monkey is. So thank you. So, Amanda, please tell us about your company, your organization, and I guess give us a bit of background on yourself and what led you into being able to just hone in on such well, it is a skill, but often we just think of it as something, yeah, we'll get around to one day, but we never do. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so my journey starts when I was an angsty teenager. I remember coming home from school one day and just had all of these big teenage feelings, and I didn't know what to do with them. And none of my friends could come to the phone, and the only thing I could think to do was grab a notebook and a pencil and start to write. And I had always loved writing for school, but this is the first time that I ever connected writing with how I felt. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and when I was done, I felt lighter. I felt better. I felt like everything I was experiencing was manageable. So the next night I picked up my pen and again the next night and the next. And I built this really beautiful practice that not only helped me be able to understand what I think and how I feel, but also really witness to myself that I was here, that I was living, that I mattered, that I was part of the magic of the universe. And I journaled for a long, long time through high school, through college, and then I got married. And turns out it's really hard to carve out time for yourself when there's always somebody around. And I had a kid and then a couple more. And before I knew it, my beloved journaling practice was so sporadic. And even though I knew that writing things down was important, even though I knew that journaling was an important way for me to make sense of the world and myself, I didn't make the time for it. And it really showed. It's my one regret in life that I let my practice lapse because not only did I miss documenting so much of my children's early lives, but I missed a lot of years of getting to know myself, who I was, what I wanted. And before I knew it, I was really off track. I had a almost 15-year marriage with a narcissist. That I didn't even realize was the case until I got out of it. So we got divorced because he came home one day and declared he'd finally decided he'd be happier not being married to me. And I didn't I didn't know in that moment what I was going to do, but I knew I had a choice to make, that I could allow myself to spiral into negativity or I could reach out and grab hold of every good thing I can find. So that's what I chose and it started with my journal and I pulled it out and I pulled out my favorite writing pen and I just forced myself to write what I was grateful for. And I will tell you, Nova, it was really hard because I did not feel grateful for very much in that moment. But I came
Mhm.
up with 8 things. And I thought if I can be grateful for 8 things on the hardest day of my life, I'm going to be okay. So I used my journal not just as a way to put all my feelings on the page, but really as a way to reconnect with myself, to rediscover who I was, what I wanted, who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, and how I was going to make that happen. So journaling became not just a nice to do if I had a few extra minutes, but it became a mission critical activity for me to be able to move my life forward in all the ways that were important to me. And I started sharing and teaching about journaling about 3 or 4 years ago, kind of accidentally on purpose. I had come to LinkedIn hearing it was a place of opportunity and quickly realized it was a place of knowledge sharing. And I wanted something that I could put back into this economy. And I thought, well, I can probably talk about journaling for 3 or 4 days, maybe stretch it to a week. Because in my mind, it was journaling. It was so intuitive to me at that point that I thought surely everybody must know about journaling. Everybody must uh, figure out how to incorporate it in their lives. And I quickly realized that wasn't the case. So I have built a business around helping people not just journal, but really to carve out spaces and time for themselves. So I have this beautiful journaling community where we take this normally solitary activity and bring it into this community container where we are safe to show up as our vulnerable, authentic selves and really help each other remember how to human, where we really discover who we are, build self-compassion, which leads to self-love. And from that place, we can do all the things.
Oh my goodness, that it sounds like so therapeutic. I mean, I know from counseling people for so many years that it is a therapeutic experience on an individual level, but gosh, I don't know if we have any of those groups here in Australia. There may be, I'm just not aware of them. So if you're listening and you know of these groups, please tell me in the comments or the reviews, guys, because we need more of these groups. Because what I'm hearing is that uh, you can take something that people would associate that it's just a solitary thing, which makes it, harder to get involved in when you can barely get yourself out of bed, when you've been abused by a narcissist or you've been through any kind of trauma. But if you can take an activity like that and surround yourself with people to help you do better, I guess, and get support from them and be able to support others, then that's got to be, a thousandfold more therapeutic. Gosh. So, Amanda, I would imagine that in your groups, you would have had quite a few victims, survivors like yourself of narcissistic abuse, domestic violence. So, can you tell us about their experience in terms of getting there? Getting that foot out the door, making that first move, and how they began, and of course, how it helped them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that I've noticed about clients that I've worked with who've come with this history is this lack of, well, what do I even call it? Um,
Maybe confidence that your
yeah,
words matter or it's going to help in any way.
yeah, I think worth. I think it's a worth issue,
It's
right?
worth.
So like feeling that we're even worthy of doing this thing for ourselves. Because coming out of a relationship like that, I know for me, I didn't even realize what an abusive relationship it was until I was on the other side and
Mm,
somebody else pointed it out to me. And I was like, oh, no, no, no. Like, I wasn't in an abusive relationship. Like, he didn't hit
mm,
me, he didn't name call. But when I started to look at all of the different pieces, it became very apparent that it really was because we had the gaslighting and the knock you down a peg and all of these small things that just whittled away. Because
yeah.
when we had gotten married, I was the strong, confident woman. And then by the time we got divorced, I was a mess. I didn't recognize myself. And so
Mm,
folks that I've worked with who I work with in this capacity come to me like that. They're shaken. They don't they don't feel confident in themselves and there's really a worth issue. Like they know deep down they're worthy, but maybe not. They're not really sure. It comes with a big question mark.
yeah.
And they've become so disconnected from who they are and what's important to them
Mm,
and really have there's this gap between who they are now and who they know they want to be, and they just don't know how to cross it. So,
mm,
through journaling, we really work on three things. The first one is self-awareness, knowing who we are and why we do the things that we do, and really understanding ourselves and our values and our motivations really helps us to build self-compassion.
mm.
Because the more self-compassionate we are, the easier it is to heal, the easier it is to
Mm.
grow.
I
And the
think,
self-compassion
oh, sorry, Amanda. I was just going to say that's just such a gotcha moment for me because, uh, or a moment that resonates with me because not only would you be uh, gaining your own self-awareness about when you've been conditioned to not trust your instincts and not trust yourself, you would also be validating who they are because you're processing it as you go. So you're understanding yourself, I would imagine, but you're also gaining an understanding of who they are, who your abuser is.
Yeah, and the situation and how it unfolded, right?
Mm,
So we go from self-awareness to self-compassion because the more we understand ourselves, it just opens the door to grace and compassion and kindness.
mm,
And that self-compassion opens the door to the self-love, which is so easy to lose in the process of abuse and narcissism and all of that. So to
Mhm.
really be able to reclaim themselves, to reclaim their stories, their identity, and do so with so much compassion and love, that is the journey that I've seen over and over.
Yeah. And I think being able to see your thoughts on paper, as I said earlier, that they become more real. That you've taken, you've emptied your head, you've put it on paper. There's no abuser around you to tell you that your thoughts are wrong, and of course you can come back to them and add to them. I wanted to ask you about something you said just a minute ago, which was that it becomes, or it can be, work. And that's what I found quite often with my clients, is that especially people who, in inverted commas, hate writing. And that's why I always say to them, and I said this in my book, Fake Love, that journaling, when I say journal, I'm not asking you to write War and Peace, and often that's what a lot of people think, don't they? They think you're wanting to sit there and write reams and reams a day. But can you tell those people who think, oh, I don't want to write, I'm not a writer, how that it is possible and they too can journal?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about journaling is that it's really accessible. When we get out of thinking that journaling is this one specific thing that fits in this little box and has to look a certain way, we really open up the field for for finding what works best for us. And I love seeing that in our community because we have one woman who writes the most beautiful poetry as a response to the prompts that we use. We have somebody else who almost always writes in bullet points. We have other people who use this, prose and just are really wordy. I am one of those people. I tend to be very wordy. But it can look any kind of way. So often we let our early experiences in school dictate how we feel about writing. And just realizing that our journal doesn't judge, that it's not there to judge our thoughts, our ideas, our experiences. It's not there to judge how we write, our spelling, our grammar, our handwriting, how straight our margins are. You would not believe how many people I've talked to get hung up on things like my spelling is really terrible or my handwriting is really messy,
Mm,
right? Or even I don't know what to say. And there are, again, so many beautiful ways to journal. We can each find something that works for us. For people who don't like to write by hand, typing is a perfectly acceptable. I always love
mhm.
to handwrite because it's the one time I actually pick up a pen consistently is when I'm writing in my journal. Everything else I do is typing. But for folks who can't write for various reasons or can't stand the look of their own handwriting, typing's totally fine. Use an app. If writing really isn't your jam, pick up your phone and give yourself a voice recording or video yourself, right? Just give yourself a space and a container and a method for reflecting to sit with whatever comes up. Because in our lives, we're so go, 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 that for most of us, sitting still is really hard. Being
Mhm.
reflective is really hard, especially when we are in a painful, traumatic period of our lives. It's not generally comfortable. And so being really compassionate with ourselves is super, super, super important.
Yeah, exactly. So, Amanda, what came to mind in your words just then was the pain that some people are frightened of. Understandably, this is why people sometimes avoid counseling. Talking about it, getting busier in their life is because they want to avoid that pain, going over it again, when we know the reality is that if you don't process it, it's going to come out in some form in your life, and probably not at the best time and not in the best way. So what what do you say to those people, and how do you support those people who really are terrified of opening up that Pandora's box, and potentially reliving their trauma, which they're trying so hard to move on from?
Yeah, the first thing I'd like to tell folks is you can do this at your own speed and at your own comfort. There's no need to jump right in the deep end, jump headfirst into the deep end. If that is going to completely dysregulate your nervous system, that won't do you any good. You might need to start with the shallow end and just dip your toes in the water. For folks who want to build a journaling practice, but who aren't yet ready to unearth all of their trauma, just building a practice, right? Getting comfortable putting your thoughts on the page. And you
Mm,
don't have to start with your deepest, darkest thoughts. You can start, I always joke, write about what you ate for breakfast, right?
mhm.
And it sounds like a really, silly thing to do. But let's say you make this delicious bowl of oatmeal in the breakfast, right? So start by talking about that oatmeal. Describe it. Get used to putting words on the page as you detail how you made that oatmeal.
Mhm.
Is steel cut oats made in your pressure cooker with heavy cream and cinnamon and cardamom,
Oh,
right? With
yum.
yes, it's my favorite,
Carbs.
right? And from there, right, talk about how you feel when you eat
Mm,
this warm, delicious bowl of oatmeal. And
mm,
then from there, what else brings you those warm, fuzzy feelings, right?
mm,
You don't immediately have to jump into, okay, now I'm going to process my trauma. But even
mm,
just building the practice of having a journaling experience for you, because there's
mm,
no way I ever could have, would have turned to my journal in my moment of need if
mhm,
I hadn't already have had enough experience with journaling to know that it was accessible to me, to
mm,
know that it would make me feel better, right? So building a practice where you're comfortable sitting down with your thoughts, putting thoughts on the page in a completely honest way, super important. Then
mhm,
I ask my clients for three things. I ask for them to be open, to be brave, and to be kind. To be open because we don't always know what we're going to see on the other side of our pen, right? When we ask ourselves a question like, what am I feeling? We might think we know the answer, but as we get writing, we might discover we are feeling something totally different than what we expected, right? When we dig through those layers, there are a lot of surprises, a whole lot of days, even when times are good, right? So just be open to whatever comes up, however it comes up. There's no right and wrong here. And when we are journaling, we are just journaling for us. We are not
mhm,
turning it in for a grade. We're not showing it to anybody else. This is a safe place. So be really open, be honest, be willing to let whatever comes up, and trust that is exactly the right thing for
yeah.
you in this moment.
Yeah, I
Be,
think it's really such a good point to make, in that you said no one's judging them, because victims of narcissistic abuse are so used to being judged. They're so used to being on the back foot and being, ready to defend themselves. And often they get conditioned to pair together as a conditioned response they have, is that success, happiness is paired together with failure, disappointment.
yeah.
So they end up, it ends up becoming this self-fulfilling prophecy, where they don't begin, because their brain is protecting them in a weird way from those feelings of failure. So yeah, what I always say to my clients, just the ones who just don't want to do it and they hate writing, is okay, you got 1 minute free a day, okay? Then you put aside 1 minute, because we procrastinate with things that we really don't want to do. And often it's just putting the pen to paper and beginning, isn't it? And if you can get that far, then it's like, okay, well, I'm here, so I might as well keep going.
Absolutely. I am a huge proponent of using a timer in my journaling
That,
for that reason and for like a
yes.
thousand other reasons. But going back to those three things I ask my clients for, right? Be
Mhm.
really open to whatever comes up, be really brave and willing to look at whatever comes up. And it can be so hard and so
Mhm.
scary. But once we bring it to light, we give it some air, there's just enough perspective, enough distance between our brains and the page to get the perspective we need. Everything is bigger and scarier when it's in our heads,
Mhm.
and somehow putting it on paper makes everything just a little bit more manageable. It becomes something that is not necessarily a part of us anymore. It's related to us, it's still
Yeah.
ours, but it's not us. And we can see that it's not us, and we can figure out what to do with it. And
Yeah.
then also be kind because, again, this is hard work.
Mm.
Healing is hard work.
Mhm.
And it's much easier when we are kind and compassionate with ourselves. And it's essential if we want to heal and grow and learn and move our lives forward. It is
Mhm.
always easier from a place of love and compassion.
Absolutely. One thing that really fascinated me when I learnt it was that we can think at up to something like, I think it's like 1,500 words a minute. It might even be more. That's how many words go through our head a minute when we're thinking, and that's really hard to process. So when we journal, we slow everything down. It's not just this, jumble of thoughts, and we give them life, and it's there. It's like, wow, that happened to me. And yeah, and as you said, we get to it's like a release. It's not in our head anymore, and our brain can think about something else. Um, what one question I had, Amanda, that I'm just curious about is the difference, if you have found any, between men and women, in terms of the fact that, it's changing slowly, but men are conditioned through society to not talk about their emotions and feelings. That's a girly thing to do, and it can be a really embarrassing thing to do that. Do you have many men that you support? And if you do have them, do you find that it is more difficult for them to open up to themselves?
Yeah, that is a great question. So when I first started this, I heard a lot of, oh, journaling's for girls. Oh, journaling, you mean keeping a diary? Yeah, my sister did that when she was a teenager,
Mm,
right? This kind of narrative. I hear it much less now than I did even 2 years ago. I will tell you the majority of folks that I work with are women, but I work with a lot of men too who have just come to a place where they're like, it's not sustainable to not consider my feelings. And I think we are moving into this time in our world where it is just generally more accepted, again, even now more than it was just a few years ago, that everybody has feelings, and everyone is better off when we all acknowledge and process them, women and men alike. And I will say the men that I've worked with have come to me from a place of knowing they're ready. Women will come to me not sure if they're ready. But the men I've worked with have done some work before to get themselves in a place where they are ready to sit down and journal.
mhm. Okay. So, Amanda, tell us about some of the people and their experiences who have come to see you in terms of releasing that kind of pain and that trauma and the feelings they have. Because I could imagine there would be an absolute gamut of emotions going on as they, just kind of process their trauma. Tell me about some of the stages that of healing and processing these people go through from start to finish. You know, what's it like for them in the very beginning, in particular?
Yeah, and I'm going to largely speak from my own experience here because
Mhm.
I think it's easier for me to access my story in a way that's accessible for others. I know for me, it started with denial. Like, oh, I cannot believe this is happening. How did this
Mm.
happen? Right? Was really my prevailing question. How did I get my life so off track? Where did it go wrong? How did I not know? Spoiler, I didn't know because I wasn't paying attention in my own life because it was too uncomfortable for me to pay attention to what was
And you,
happening.
and to be fair, Amanda,
Yeah.
you were conditioned to override red flags very early on. And the goal of narcissistic abuse is to get you to not pay attention. So, yeah, it wasn't your fault in any way, shape, or form. But, you know, we like to, give ourselves some of that blame, but yeah, it belongs on the shoulders of your abuser.
No, absolutely. And also, I feel like I I might have had a chance to figure out sooner what was going on
Mm.
had I maintained my journaling
Your
practice.
journaling.
Had
Yeah.
I been able to really keep up and process all of it as I went, even
Yeah.
to go back in retrospect and say,
Yeah.
oh, wait a minute, this thing I wrote, that sounds really weird, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I found that curiosity was an essential part and a desire to heal and a desire to build back my worth, to build back my confidence, to really start from this place of compassion, to
Yeah.
not beat myself up, to be very gentle.
Yeah.
There was for me, and I'm thinking of another client who went through something similar, being able to acknowledge our strengths and our gifts instead of like, there's nothing special about us, right? To really be able to claim and own like this is what makes me special and beautiful and unique, and this is what I bring to the world, to my community, to my friends, to my family. This is purpose and worth, and we are worthy as we are. We always are, but rediscovering that and discovering the different ways that it looks parlays into a return of confidence.
Yeah. There must be um, a, a, a really good feeling to see the journey that people have with you when they first come, and they're potentially broken, the domestic violence victims, and who they become as they learn to journal and rediscover their self-worth and their self-love. It must be really fulfilling for you.
Absolutely. And it's more fulfilling for me to watch them as they go back and revisit, as
Yeah.
folks open their journals from last week, last month, last year, however long, and really be able to benchmark through their own words in their own handwriting. Oh, look, here's my path. Here's how I've grown. Last year I was here in this place, and now I'm here in this other place that I've grown this much. I've
Yes.
healed this much. That
Yes, you
is
can
really
gauge your
amazing to
healing,
see.
can't you? That's so true. You can look back at what you wrote a year ago, and then it becomes, even more evident your how far you've come on your healing journey. You Something that just sprung to mind when you were saying that you stopped journaling, and this isn't related specifically to journaling, but more to that was your passion. That was something that was your gift, your skill, your passion, and it brought you joy and fulfillment. And as so often happens in these abusive relationships, and you don't even know that you're doing it because of the coercive control, you're conditioned to give up those passion through fear of the punishment. Yeah, I just thought, wow, that it sounds like that was your passion, and you had to give it up, probably through punishment that you didn't even realize was punishment, and then rediscover your passion, which was journaling. Is that like, that's what I find with many of my clients. So I'm just wondering if in reflection, do you think that that's something that fell by the wayside because of this coercive control, because of the abuse?
I would say not initially.
Not initially.
Initially,
Yeah.
initially it was just there was somebody else around. So I didn't have this space and time that was my own.
Yeah.
And it was the expectation that I was going to be doing certain things instead of carving out time for myself. Because
Yeah.
I don't even think it occurred to me at the age I was at and the stage in life I was in that
Yeah.
in a marriage, I could have time to myself. Because I think I bought into this narrative that, okay, I'm no longer one person. We're a unit. And that means that I'm here with you and we do the stuff and we're together all of the time. And I think
Yeah.
that was a lot of it for me.
Yeah.
Um, but the longer I went without writing, the easier it became not to write. And
Yeah.
it was interesting because when I did open my journal, I always started it with something akin to, well, it's been 6 weeks and 4 days since the last time I journaled. And I learned pretty quickly that that's a really great way to start from a place of shame. My
Yeah.
journal is not keeping track.
Mm.
My journal is not keeping score. My journal is not confession. It's not somebody who's sitting there waiting to dole out some consequence to me because
Yeah.
I haven't shown up. But instead, my journal was there holding space. It was always there when I turned to it. And
Mhm.
so realizing and remembering, oh, wait, I can make time for this. And I love how you said earlier that with your clients, you often say, write for 1 minute, right? We
Mm.
can start so small. There are
Mm.
journals out there that have space just to write one line a day. I think that's what they're called,
Yeah.
right? So we don't have to write a lot to
No.
have our practice be really significant. What
Mhm.
is significant is carving out that time and that space, giving
Exactly.
ourselves permission to reconnect with ourselves,
Yeah.
even if reconnecting with ourselves starts with something innocuous like what did we eat for breakfast this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I know, we know the benefits of journaling. But for someone who, has just been discarded by their abuser and they're feeling the worst they've ever felt in their life, just getting one foot, out of bed or just showering a day can be something that's just so overwhelming. So I think that's when we have to say, you're going to have to start doing this when it feels bad. Don't
Yeah.
wait till you're feeling amazing because it may never happen. So yeah, I think it's really important to realize that it's going to take a little bit of time. It's not an instant fix. It's about those baby steps. But as you said, it's about starting. When we do well, I know I did when I had a university assignment coming up. I'd procrastinate and I'd go and pat the dog. I'd do this and I'd do that, anything, then begin that assignment. But when I finally started, oh well, I'm here now. And often it's just starting that is the most work, and it doesn't always feel good in the beginning.
Right. So I often advise people find something to pair it with, right? What's something that brings you joy? Is it your cup of coffee in the morning? Is it your evening cup of tea? Is it listening to a beautiful piece of music, sitting in your favorite chair on your front porch?
Mm,
Whatever that thing is that you're doing anyway, right?
mm,
Habit stack.
yeah.
Um, can you build it into your schedule after something you always do? Maybe I brush my teeth and then I write something I'm grateful for in my journal.
Yeah,
So
that's such a
much of my,
great, yeah, that's such a great idea. I had Dr. Gina Cleo on a few weeks ago, and she's a worldwide expert in habit changes, and that's exactly the type of thing she spoke about in terms of rewiring our brain, basically making new associations by and that's exactly what you said, putting that journaling, which we might consider to be work, something we don't want to do, and pairing it together with something enjoyable. That's the fantastic idea. Yeah, yeah. So um Amanda, tell our followers a little bit about how they can start journaling if they are still in their domestic violence situation. If they're still with the narcissist, particularly if they're like you were and they're enmeshed with that person and they're conditioned not to give themselves any time or to have any needs. And I would imagine also they're worried about their abuser finding their journal. How can those people start this practice?
yeah. The first I'm going to suggest is a mindset shift because when it's hard for us to do things for ourselves, it's often easier for us to do it for somebody else. So even if we can't build the habit for us, can we do it for our child? Can we do it for our best friend? Can we do it for our pet? For whoever it is we love the most right in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it for them because we know that they want us to take care of ourselves. And this is a way we can do it.
Mhm.
Um, for folks who are worried about somebody reading their journal, and I will be really transparent and say that I'm really grateful for all of the stuff that I went through. I didn't worry about him reading my journal. That was a luxury I had. I always felt like I had the space.
Mm.
Um, but maybe can you leave your journal at work? Can you
Mhm.
leave it in somewhere where they're not going to find it? Can you lock it up?
Mm.
Can you use a password protected document, right? Somewhere where you can feel like it is safe and secure
Mm.
because journaling is only helpful if we are honest. And
Mm.
it is really, really hard to be honest when we feel like somebody's going to read our stuff and
Yeah.
judge us or we're going to get in trouble or whatever it is.
Yes.
I would
Always the
also,
goal is to get away. That my advice always is you can't fix them, and it is not your job to tolerate the abuse. It is your job to leave and to heal. But sometimes victims are just not ready, and we can't judge them. But if we can give them, some kind of tool like journaling, and give them some kind of boundaries around that or protective mechanisms around that, then that's something that they have, because the reality is that if they're still there, then their abuser is controlling them. Yeah.
yeah. And also to remember that journaling doesn't just have to be about our feelings. There's so many ways we could journal. And so maybe in that season, just building the practice is the most important thing. So lean
Yeah.
into gratitude because even when we are in a terrible situation, we can always find something to be grateful for, right?
Yeah.
So to do that, to to use our journal to document to document maybe our children's lives if we have them, right? What are
Yeah.
those moments that our kids are doing and how do we feel about that?
Yeah.
Something that even if somebody else read it, it wouldn't necessarily be a trigger to anybody because you're not talking about you and how you feel and this person's terrible and XYZ, right? You're even in a even in my situation, um, I don't want to say I was allowed. That feels very dramatic, but if he had stumbled across my journal, he'd be like, "Oh, cool, she's grateful.
Yeah.
You know, she's
Mm.
grateful for all I've provided for her." Right?
Yeah.
That would be how I know he would have
Yeah.
read
I think
all
it
of
just
that.
it would be determined uh, uh, to your specific stage and your,
Yeah.
where you are in life and the context of what you've got in your journal and who it is that's finding it. But one other thing I think, particularly for victims who are still coming to terms with the fact that this is toxic. They're not yet ready to leave. They haven't had that light bulb moment. Safe journaling, not letting your abuser, your dangerous abuser, see it, can also be a way of seeing patterns of behavior develop because Amanda, we get conditioned to minimize the abuse and rationalize it away. It's not that bad, and they didn't really mean it. But if we start writing about what's going on and about the circumstances, then we can go back and go, wow, that's what's going on. We can see that this is not an isolated incident. There are patterns of behavior here because he or she was doing the same thing, 6 months ago and has been doing it, every week or whatever the pattern is.
Yeah, journaling is such a great revealer
Yeah,
of truth. When we are honest on the page, whatever we're writing about, the truth comes out and we can see those patterns. We can see what is happening to us. We can see where we are showing up. We can see where we're shrinking as small as we can, right? We can see those patterns and learn from them. But it's so hard to see them when they're all in our heads. They're too close.
yeah, yeah. Especially when your abuse is still in your life because you're in what we call in the narcissistic abuse recovery community, we call it the fog, the fear, obligation, guilt. And you can't really see it until you're on the other side of that circle and you can get that perspective because you've got contrast. Yeah. So, look, Amanda, I am so grateful for your advice and your expertise and the fact that you've got this organization, you've developed this support group for people, and I think it is such a needed experience and group to have in society, and I really hope that more people start doing this and form and join support groups like yours. So, and can you give everyone just a little bit of advice around, I guess, just some final summary around what to do if they're nearly there, but they just can't see themselves writing. What should they do?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Um, I would say give it a chance. Give it a chance because we often don't like something or don't know we don't like something until we've tried it. And
Mm,
I think of it in terms of trying foods, right? How many times have you tried that one food over and over and over before you really decide you have an opinion on it. I think of yogurt. I have tried to like yogurt 47 times, I think, in my life. And each time I give it a shot, and maybe this will be the time it sticks, right? Because so many people that I've spoken to who have a attitude towards journaling just haven't found a way that resonates with them.
Yeah.
So I would say give yourself a chance
Yeah.
and give yourself the flexibility of playing around and see what resonates with you. Understanding that it might not be all sunshine and roses. Sitting down with ourselves can be really hard, especially when we keep ourselves so busy that we don't have to reflect. So lead with compassion.
Yeah.
Start with a minute. Start with one thing to be grateful for. Um, Start with something easy. You don't have to dive headfirst into the deep end. You can dip your toe into the shallow end, and you can stay with one toe in the water as long as you need to until you're ready to put your whole foot on that first step.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess always make sure you're safe, guys. If you are journaling and you're beginning this experience, and you are, experiencing these emotions that you need help with, reach out, seek a therapist, who a trauma-informed and therapist. A therapist, go and see someone like Amanda. Amanda, can you tell everyone where to go? Can they see you online? Like, have you got an online community?
Yeah, so the best place to find me right now is on LinkedIn. I'm
Hmm.
on LinkedIn sharing journaling related content just about every day. My community is online. Right now, you can read about it at journalingforgrowth.com/membership. And you can learn all about what it's like to be in my spaces. You can see the topics we're going to be exploring.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, okay. Look, I mean, once again, I want to thank you so much. As I said earlier, it's not something I thought I could do a whole episode on, but it was so easy because it is such an important concept, and there are so many people out there who would benefit from it, who have experienced trauma, and for people who haven't experienced, the type of trauma that narcissistic abuse victims have. So, yeah, I think this is an amazing episode, a lot of information for victims and survivors out there. And I hope people reach out to you. And guys, form your own support groups if you can, but make sure you have someone you trust, because you don't want to give those intimate secrets or your vulnerabilities over to someone who's going to use them, as we know your abuser did or does, those weapons against you. So, yeah. All right, Amanda. Well, look, thank you very much. And hopefully I will catch up with you again at another episode. Take care.
Thank you, Nova.
And that brings us to the end of another Fake Love and Flying Monkeys episode. Journaling, it really is an underrated strategy for healing from narcissistic abuse and all kinds of trauma for that matter. And Amanda certainly provided some amazing insight into the benefits of journaling. So, guys, if you would like to have a one-on-one counseling session with me, please just see the link in the description. And as always, don't forget to get your copy of my best-selling book, Fake Love: Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. Please, if you'd like to support the channel, guys, leave a rating and a review. That's how you can help this channel to keep going. And on that note, it's bye from me for now. Until tomorrow's episode, remember, you are worthy of love, and you are worthy of so much more than a lifetime of fake love and flying monkeys.